Support WrestleTalk!
Hello and welcome to this WrestleTalk reactive news. I'm Chopper Pequenell. I'm joined by Tempest George, I'm that champion. And we wanted to talk a little bit because Dynamite last night on the special Tuesdays titles.
That's the title.
What's the is that the title of this video?
It is now.
On the special Tuesday episode of Dynamite, we had the main event, which was Hangman Page versus Jon Moxley for the AEW World title. But of course, the thing that's kind of overshadowing the whole thing currently was the unfortunate injury to Hangman Page, which happened right at the end of the match, obviously, because the match was called off because of it. Just a King Kong lariat from Moxley, and Hangman seemed to take a rough bump, landed kind of like on his head and neck area from the butt, like he did like the flip bump that people do when they get, turned inside out and all that stuff. But just seemed to land really poorly, and then the match was called off. We wanted to just take a moment because in yesterday's reactive news, Ollie and Luke spoke about how AEW haven't been very transparent with fans about like injuries like of this caliber and things like that, and kind of keeping fans in the dark a lot. They did the exact opposite for this one here. I think this is just going to be completely well done AEW, the video, because Paul Turner immediately in this one reacted as soon as he saw that Hangman went down, was straight in, made sure Mox wasn't doing any more damage to it, and then just called off the match and just said, no, he's out, Moxley's your winner, which was, I think, exactly the right call, because you don't want to be messing around with stuff like this.
Absolutely not. I mean, we've come a long way in wrestling, whether it be any sort of injury to the head, neck, spine, anything like that. We've come a long way in the sense that the assessment of injury is a lot better than I think it used to be. And I think this was a really good example of that, of Paul Turner assessing the situation and being able to put a stop to things. Because so often you would see people just go to pick their opponent up. And if this is, thankfully, doesn't appear to be a neck injury, appears to just be a concussion is what AEW has said. But if that, concussions and head and neck injuries often go hand in hand. And if you have a neck injury, you don't want to be jostling people around at all. So it was a very good job done by the medical staff and by the referee, Paul Turner, to assess that and tell Moxley, no, it's done. Match is over with. We're not going to do any more physicality. No, nothing. That's it. And I think they did a very good job with that.
100%. And I think leading on from that, the rest of the crew surrounding it as well, like you said, Paul Turner, Moxley, the medical stuff, and also the commentary and the production, I think did a really good job as well of, at first they just sold it like it was a spot because people didn't know like the severity of what had just happened or anything. Just like, oh, what a King Kong lariat. But then as something seemed to transpire and the referee got involved and the match started getting called off, they started just kind of covering, just being like, we're going to update you. We're updating on what's happening. The production crew panned away and showed you the commentary team who were then describing what was happening in the ring rather than just showing you the shot of it, because that can be kind of, not great, but just commentary describing, they're bringing the stretch down, they're taking Hangman out of the ring. Hopefully he's okay. We'll keep you updated and all that stuff. It's very just like candid, and they all did a really, really good job. And you could tell, particularly Taz, I found, was a bit rattled by the whole thing, because then they went through and they were running through like, the advertised matches for Rampage and Dynamite and stuff just to fill for a bit of time. But then they were saying, it really sucks. All of this has happened with Hangman. We hope he's okay, kind of thing. And we should be heading down for a post-match run with Moxley. A little production snafu, because obviously they were panicking a little bit. Came back to them. They maintained a very good air of professionalism, and I think they did really well to cover for it, because stuff like that can be really difficult especially when it's someone like Hangman who's well liked as well. To have someone kind of come on commentary, even like one of your friends, and you don't know if they're okay or not, to then maintain that air of professionalism is a really good job well done by everyone.
I thought the production side of things was very much in line for what I hope to see in the event of something like this happening. Because if we were to take this in a different direction, in a more sports-based direction, I've seen a lot of the time where an injury will happen in sports and they still feel the need to show a million replays, and someone will be lying on the field, the ice, whatever sport it is. I mean, there's one example I can think of off the top of my head where, Toronto Maple Leafs are in the playoffs a couple of years ago, and in the first game of the series, our captain, John Tavares, took a knee to the head and was out on the ice, and they just kept showing replay after replay after replay after replay of it. And a lot of people online are just like, we don't need to see it. If we saw it happen once, we know it's bad, and you can tell us, like, update us on the situation, but we don't need to see a million shots of it. We don't need to see somebody getting their clock cleaned and possibly having, you know, a brain or neck injury or whatnot. You don't need to see the replays of it.
Yeah.
And I think this was much more in line with what I hope to see. Just treating the person involved as a human who's just suffered a horrendous injury and treating that with a level of levity and a level of respect that just goes with, okay, this is no longer entertainment. This is a person who's now hurt. And let's not show the people a million times what's just happened.
100%, yeah. And then afterwards as well, Moxley did his post-match promo and kind of went a little bit off the dome as well, just being like, you know, I hope that Hangman gets better. You know, he's got a wife and kids that he needs to be around for, so I really hope he can get stronger. But, you know, pro wrestling's dangerous. Kind of cutting this really, like, impassioned promo about how dangerous pro wrestling is, and somehow managed to get, like, fired up as part of that, and the crowd were like, yeah, let's go Moxley, even though, like, he just said, like, you know, pro wrestling's really dangerous. And, like, that's it. The crowd were like, woo! Yeah! Because he's great. Moxley's fantastic. And I think just coming up with that off the dome was great. Eventually led to him calling out MJF. MJF came out, did a promo, teased like a cash-in with the chip, then cut his own promo about, you know, which we'll talk about on the Dynamite podcast that we're going to be covering later today as well. All of that, I think, kind of was a much-needed, like, pick-me-up, because the crowd were a bit like, oh, God, like, you know, it's not great that Hangman's injured. And then that Moxley and MJF promo kind of made the crowd go, okay, we can breathe a little bit again. You know, it seemed to be okay. He was being taken care of, had been stretched out, and we had like a fun thing to end the show, which was a nice like breather for the crowd as well. So another very good job for Mox and MJF in particular to maintain that professionalism once more.
Of course. I mean, I wouldn't blame them at all if they had to go off the air with this.
Yeah.
Because obviously these sort of things are not planned whatsoever. You can't plan for this. But I think it does just kind of go to show that the people involved are pros at this and that they can handle something like this and move forward, push forward, and try and make any sort of positive just to send the crowd home happy. Because otherwise, this episode of Dynamite I thought was pretty fantastic from start to finish. And it really would have been a shame to have this one horrendous moment taint an otherwise very good show. And it still did.
Of course it did.
But they still managed to send people home with a little bit more show than just, oh, it's over and we're all going to go home with a pit in our stomach all of a sudden.
Absolutely, yeah.
Moxley said
He did. He said I thought they weren't allowed to do that anymore.
I didn't think they were ever allowed to do that.
But they did it.
They sure did.
He plays by his own rules. Following on from AEW doing a good job of this as well, they then did a public statement on Twitter not too long afterwards, which read, Hangman Adam Page was taken tonight by medical personnel to a Cincinnati trauma center and diagnosed with a concussion. He was discharged, but will remain in AEW's concussion protocol. AEW and Hangman Page are grateful for the exemplary response and care of staff and local medical personnel and are appreciative of the love and support of fans everywhere, which kind of made everyone go, okay, so he has a concussion, which is bad. You know, concussions are never good, but it could have been a lot worse. And the fact that he was discharged from hospital is great. Doesn't need to stay too long in there, and he can just focus on that recovery process from now, which is really good news because, as I said, it could have been much, much worse.
Yeah, and Dave Meltzer has tweeted an update saying that he's fine, as fine as you can be with a concussion.
Yeah.
Which, you know, comes as, again, like you said, concussions are never good. But when the report is coming out that, you know, Adam Cole has a concussion and it's a bad concussion, and there's really no timetable for his return, this is another situation where you see someone else, a very high-profile star in AEW, get another concussion, and you immediately think the worst. You think this could be really bad, and then it's nice to be able to get this exhale moment where, again, it's bad, but it's not as bad as it could have been.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the thing that it was most reminiscent of to me was the bump that Big E took when he went out with his injury. Kind of similar situation for that one, but and Big E's wished him well as well wished Hangman well on Twitter as well, which is great to see, like, you know, across promotion stuff, you know, but all of these guys are big friends, and there's that sense of camaraderie, I think, between the two because they're very similar looking injuries. But obviously we've seen how terrible Big E's injury was and how devastating that even could have been, because even that wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Right.
I think Hangman he's got off really light on this one, even though it is a concussion, and that's really good news.
Yeah.
And it's just the latest in the string of very bad luck for AEW. Bunch of injuries. People like Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole, as you mentioned, with his very severe concussion. CM Punk, obviously, with his foot injury. Thunder Rosa, obviously, we've still got an interim AEW World Champion right now. Chris Statlander, Ruby Soho. Obviously, Kenny Omega was out with all of his injuries for a long time. Christian Cage. There's just like been injury after injury after injury through AEW. And some of that's been under their control with the injuries and stuff, but also there's been the whole backstage unrest kind of thing, the backstage fighting with the Elite and Kenny, the contract tampering and all that stuff. It's been a really bad string of luck for AEW, and this is continuing. I'm hoping that can come to an end before long, because it's never great to see any promotion out there just have like bad luck. It's just not great.
Just a dark cloud following them at times.
Really is. Yeah.
Just again, taking away from the enjoyment of the product, and obviously all of the things that you mentioned were on varying different levels of control. And obviously with the injuries, you can't control that sort of thing. But it does just feel like another bad break for AEW. And you hope that Hangman Page doesn't have to miss considerable amount of time in all this, because, I mean, he's one of their top stars. He's one of the most beloved stars on the show. Everybody loves that cowboy. And if you miss out on another top star, it does just feel like another gut punch in a year that has felt like a lot of gut punches in a row. So again, you hope for the best and hope that this string of bad luck can come to an end sooner rather than later.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And obviously, best wishes to Hangman Page. Hopefully you get well soon. We miss you already. And thank you for watching this episode of the Reactive News. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. We're going to have more news and stuff. I've been Chopper Pete Cornell. I've been joined by Tempest George. I'm that champion. Cowboy
Yeehaw.